Hello and welcome. I am Thomas Porteus and you are watching The World Report. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines this hour. South Korea's President Yoon Yeol delivers a final address to the nation before his dramatic arrest. His detention follows a failed attempt to impose martial law and recent impeachment proceedings, plunging the country into political turmoil. President Biden and Egypt's El-Sisi emphasize the need for maximum flexibility to achieve a Gaza ceasefire. Meanwhile, Israel intercepts a missile launched from Yemen as ceasefire talks intensify. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov claims North Korean soldiers fighting in Ukraine are using suicide tactics to avoid capture. Allegations of troops blowing themselves up spark alarm among international observers, and the conflict escalates. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov proposes adding India to the Afghan Quad, a grouping that currently includes Russia, China, Pakistan and Iran. The move aims to strengthen regional cooperation on Afghanistan's future. In a video message addressing the nation before his arrest, President Yoon Yeol said he had agreed to appear before the Corruption Investigation Office for questioning. He is being investigated on charges of insurrection following a short-lived attempt to impose martial law in December. Let us take a look at the report.
Yoon Yeol has become South Korea's first sitting president to be arrested after investigators scaled barricades and cut through barbed wire to take him into custody. Yoon, aged 64, is being investigated on charges of insurrection for a failed martial law on 3rd December that plunged the country into turmoil. He has also been impeached by Parliament and suspended from office, but will not be removed from his position until the Constitutional Court rules on his impeachment. In a pre-recorded video message released after his arrest, Yoon said he had made the decision to submit to questioning over his failed martial law bid to avert bloodshed.
그러나 제가 이 공수처의 수사를 인정하는 것은 아닙니다. 대한민국의 헌법과 법 체계를 수호해야 하는 대통령으로서 이렇게 불법적이고 무효인 이런 절차에 응하는 것은 이것을 인정하는 것이 아니라 불미스러운 유혈 사태를 막기 위한 마음일 뿐입니다.
Yoon's dramatic arrest on Wednesday, however, brings to an end a weeks-long standoff between investigators and his presidential security team. The Corruption Investigation Office had previously attempted to arrest him on 3rd January, but they were blocked by buses and barbed wire. But just before dawn on Wednesday, a team of investigators arrived, armed with ladders to climb over the buses and pliers to cut through the barbed wire. Other officers in the team, which numbered around 1,000, scaled walls and hiked up nearby trails to reach the presidential residence. After several hours, authorities announced that Yoon had been arrested. Bureau Report, NewsX.
We will now take a look at some news updates from North America. One rocket, two missions. Lunar landers built by US and Japanese companies launched their rideshare to the moon. On board the SpaceX 9 Falcon rocket were Firefly Aerospace Blue Ghost and iSpace's Resilience from Japan. It took off from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. iSpace is making its second attempt to land on the moon, while Firefly Aerospace launched its first moon lander, Blue Ghost, making it the third company to launch under NASA's Public-Private Commercial Lunar Payload Services program. President-elect Donald Trump's pick to lead the Pentagon, Pete Hegseth, endured fierce Democratic grilling over everything at his confirmation hearing. From inexperience, alleged drinking, and his past opposition to women in combat, to he emerged largely unscathed among Republicans. However, Hegseth weathered the 4-hour hearing without making any major gaffe that might have alienated Republicans. Hegseth has also strongly opposed women in combat roles, but walked back on that stance during the hearing. Senator Marco Rubio, Trump's nominee to be Secretary of State, is set to deliver his confirmation hearing on Wednesday. According to experts, Released by his office, he will say that China cheated its way to superpower status. He will also say that the liberal world order, long cherished by the US elite, should be discarded. Rubio calls for the US to put its core national interests above all else once again, as it works to create a free world out of chaos, according to the remarks. The US Supreme Court hears a challenge to a new Texas law requiring pornographic websites to verify visitors' ages. This is part of a growing effort to limit access by minors online to sexual content. The Texas law was passed in 2023 by the state's Republican majority legislature. However, it was initially blocked after a challenge by an adult entertainment industry trade association. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton insisted that there is nothing unconstitutional about the law requiring such websites to verify that users are over 18. US President-elect Donald Trump said he will create a new government agency called the External Revenue Service on January the 20th. Its role will be to collect tariffs, duties, and all revenue from foreign sources. This comes as he readies new import tariffs ahead of his inauguration next week. He added that Americans have been taxed for too long by Internal Revenue Service. However, Trump did not specify whether this would replace collections of tariffs by US Customs and Border Protection or the foreign corporate and individual income taxes by the IRS. Truce talks for Gaza have reached a pivotal moment. Qatar, Egypt, and the US are leading efforts to broker a ceasefire as hopes rise for an end to the devastation. Here is the latest on the situation.
Efforts to finalize a Gaza ceasefire are intensifying as negotiators make a final push to seal the deal. Egypt and the US emphasized the urgency of the situation during a high-level phone call.
We do believe that we are at a developed stage. We do believe that we are at the final stages, but obviously until there is an announcement, there will be no announcement. And therefore we shouldn't be overexcited about what's happening right now. But certainly we are hopeful that this would lead very soon to an agreement.
US President Joe Biden and Egypt's President El-Sisi have called for maximum flexibility to ensure a deal is reached. Both leaders stressed the need for immediate relief to Gaza's suffering population. Meanwhile, images from the Israeli side of the border capture smoke rising over northern Gaza. The devastation underscores the urgency for a ceasefire as mediators work tirelessly behind the scenes.
Our intensive efforts have brought us to the brink of full and final agreement. On Sunday, the United States, Qatar, and Egypt put forward a final proposal. The ball is now in Hamas's court. If Hamas accepts, the deal is ready to be concluded and implemented.
While negotiators push for progress, Israel is showing true willingness to make a deal. The country remains prepared to pay a high price, including releasing hundreds of Palestinian prisoners, to secure the hostages' return.
I believe that if we will achieve this hostage deal, we will have a majority in the government that will support the agreement. So this is the simple answer. I know there is a true willingness from our side to reach an agreement.
Protests are mounting in Tel Aviv as relatives of hostages demand swift action. Hundreds gathered, listening to emotional speeches and songs, hoping for a breakthrough in the negotiations. In Gaza, residents describe scenes of devastation following an Israeli airstrike in the northern region. 6 people were killed in the West Bank, adding to the mounting toll of the conflict.
صمودنا أسطوري وإحنا خلقنا في هذا الوطن وحنضلنا في هذا الوطن وإن شاء الله اللي جاي حيكون أحسن وإن شاء الله حنروح على الشمال وحنعمرها بإذن الله.
As the humanitarian crisis deepens, the clock is ticking for negotiators to secure a ceasefire and prevent further escalation. Qatar remains hopeful that an agreement will be reached very soon. All eyes are now on the mediators as they push to finalize a deal that could bring a temporary ceasefire to Gaza and offer a glimmer of hope amid devastation. Bureau Report, NewsX.
We will now take a look at some news updates from Europe. Sweden is seeking to modify its constitution to enable the revocation of citizenship acquired fraudulently. Dual citizens involved in offences like treason may face the loss of their passports. The government points to risks like violent extremism and hostile foreign actors. The proposal also includes on reducing immigration. Changes to the constitution require a parliamentary vote and a second approval after elections. Ireland's main centre-right parties, Fianna Fáil and Gael, have agreed on a coalition with independents. This deal ensures a comfortable majority for the new government. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael aim to continue high spending policies and will cut VAT for food services. Michelle Martin is set to return as Prime Minister on January the 22nd. The French Socialist Party may back a no-confidence vote against François Bayrou's government. They demand changes to pension reform as a condition for support. Bayrou has opened discussions, but Socialist leader Fire stated that it is not enough. We will vote no confidence unless our demands are met. Kosovo authorities raided 10 municipal offices in ethnic Serb areas on Wednesday. This action aims to dismantle Belgrade-backed institutions ahead of parliamentary elections. This move reflects Kosovo's commitment to maintaining the constitution and the rule of law as ethnic tensions rise before February's elections. Prime Minister Albin Kurti has made this a key part of his campaign. The leader of Transnistria visited Moscow for energy talks. Russia cut gas supplies on January the 1st due to Moldova's unpaid debts. This has resulted in power outages and cold conditions in the region. Moldovan President Sandu blamed Russia, stating that Transnistria is under Kremlin control. Moldova offered assistance with gas purchases, but Transnistria rejected it. Germany's GDP declined by 0.2% in 2024, marking the second straight year of economic contraction. Also, exports dropped by 0.8%, reflecting weak global demand. The fourth quarter saw a smaller decline of 0.1%, indicating no imminent recovery. This situation represents the first back-to-back annual decline since the early 2000s. Ukraine's military has claimed its largest air attacks yet on Russian territory. The Russian Defense Ministry has vowed retaliation. This comes as Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Moscow is open for talks with incoming President Donald Trump. Meanwhile, revelations on the North Korean soldiers helping Russia in the battlefield continue to take place. Here is a report.
The Russia-Ukraine battleground is heating up with each passing day. Ukraine's military has now claimed its largest air attacks yet on Russian territory. Kiev fired 6 US-made ATACMS ballistic missiles and 6 UK-made Storm Shadow cruise missiles. The Russian cities of Saratov and Engels were reportedly hit, with some damage caused to factories in the area. Some schools were forced to switch to remote learning, while several airports were forced to temporarily halt air traffic. The Russian Defense Ministry said it had shot down all of the missiles in the Bryansk region, as well as 146 drones outside the war zone. The ministry also vowed retaliation for the large-scale attacks overnight. Meanwhile, Russia's Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, at his annual news conference, said that Moscow is open to talks with incoming US President Donald Trump.
Поэтому, когда президент Трамп, став президентом, сформулирует окончательно свою позицию по украинским делам, конечно, мы будем ее изучать. Все то, что сейчас говорится, это говорится в рамках подготовки к инаугурации, в рамках подготовки к серьезным...
Lavrov specifically praised Trump's comments earlier this month, in which he said that NATO's plans to open its doors to Ukraine had led to the hostilities. On the other hand, a lawmaker on the South Korean Parliament Intelligence Committee said that the North Korean authorities reportedly call for the country's troops to self-destruct to evade capture. Citing the National Intelligence Agency, he said that the memos, carried by the soldiers killed, also emphasized self-destruction before capture. With such remarkable developments, the war now stands at crossfires between truce and a more horrific end. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Shockwaves in UK politics as Treasury Minister Tulip Siddiq, niece of former Bangladeshi PM Sheikh Hasina, resigns amid allegations of financial links to Bangladesh. Here is a report on Tulip Siddiq's resignation and the journey and allegations surrounding her.
Tulip Siddiq, responsible for financial services and anti-corruption, resigned amid increasing scrutiny. She faces scrutiny over alleged connections to a Russian deal involving her aunt, Sheikh Hasina, who was ousted as Bangladesh's Prime Minister last year. Tulip Siddiq has been a Labour MP for Hampstead and Highgate since 2015. She is known for campaigning for Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe's release from Iran and advocating for affordable childcare and mental health support. Previously a councillor in Camden, she holds degrees from University College London and King's College London. Her work reflects a commitment to her constituents and social issues. Tulip Siddiq faces scrutiny for 3 allegations. First, using 3 London properties linked to her aunt, including one from an ousted government. Second, being named in a 2013 Russian deal investigation involving embezzled funds. Third, illegally allocating land in Dhaka to her family through bribed officials. Tulip Siddiq resigned as Economic Secretary to the Treasury, stating that the watchdog found no breach of the ministerial code. She felt her role would distract from government work, leading to her decision. PM Starmer accepted her resignation and appointed Emma Reynolds as her successor. This marks a setback for Starmer, as it is the second departure of a minister in 2 months. As we wrap up, this event raises questions about Siddiq's political future and the impact on UK-Bangladesh relations, leaving us curious about what's next. Bureau Report, NewsX.
We will now take a look at some news updates from South America. Gang violence has tripled Haiti's internal displacement to over 1 million, the UN Migration Agency reports. Port-au-Prince faces worsening food insecurity and a crumbling healthcare system. Over half of the displaced are children. Forced returns from the Dominican Republic have worsened the crisis. Meanwhile, Haiti's new public security chief, Marido Ardesol, pledges to combat gang violence and restore peace. The last year, over 5,600 people were killed amid escalating turmoil. President Biden plans to lift Cuba's status as a state sponsor of terrorism tied to releasing political prisoners. Dozens are to be freed under a deal brokered by the Catholic Church. The US will ease sanctions and revise Trump-era policies. Cuba announced plans to release 553 prisoners, citing humanitarian reasons. This move aligns with Pope Francis's Jubilee Declaration. Biden's actions aim to support Cuban human rights while facing potential policy reversal under Trump. 5 were gunned down in Huitzilac, Morelos, a town plagued by criminal groups. Victims were campaigning for local resource management roles ahead of the March elections. Gunmen intercepted them on the same street where 8 were killed last year. Mayor Cesar Diaz condemned the attack, denying cartel links. Blood traces and candles marked the scene on Tuesday morning. 200 National Guard troops arrived to aid patrols. Locals fear reoccurring violence when security forces leave. Edmundo Gonzalez, Venezuelan's opposition leader, arrived in Guatemala after Maduro's inauguration. He had been in the Dominican Republic for 6 days before leaving. Gonzalez had initially planned to return to Venezuela, but postponed due to security concerns. The National Electoral Council declared Maduro the winner of the disputed election. However, opposition data showed Gonzalez winning by a large margin. Guatemala's President Arevalo plans to meet with Gonzalez on Wednesday. UN and US observers support the opposition's election results. Argentinian President Javier Milei has won the prestigious 2025 Genesis Prize. The award recognizes his unwavering support for Israel, including his decision to move Argentina's embassy to Jerusalem. Milei also advocates for justice in bombings targeting Israeli and Jewish sites in Argentina. He expressed pride in the Jewish people's resilience and aimed to strengthen ties between Argentina and Israel. The $1 million prize will be donated to fight anti-Semitism globally. Malay's approval rating is rising despite facing economic challenges at home. Brazil's President Lula has signed a bill to restrict smartphone use in schools. The law will affect elementary and high school students, limiting phone use to emergencies or educational purposes. Lula emphasized the importance of humanism over technology in education. With many Brazilians spending over 9 hours a day on screens, the bill aims to help children focusing on learning. The restriction was wide support, with most parents and students backing the move. The law will come into effect in February. Iraq and Britain have secured a landmark trade deal worth up to $14.98 billion, alongside a bilateral defence agreement. The package includes major projects in energy, infrastructure and technology, aiming to strengthen ties between the two nations and address challenges such as migration and environmental change. Here is a report.
Iraq and Britain have agreed on a trade package worth up to $14.98 billion and have signed a bilateral defense deal. Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani secured the trade package in London at the Downing Street office during a meeting with his British counterpart Keir Starmer on Tuesday. A landmark trade and export deal is over 10 times the total value of UK-Iraq bilateral trade last year. The joint statement released after the meeting stated that the leaders reaffirmed their commitment to a prosperous, sovereign Iraq through a new partnership focused on trade, investment, and strengthening educational and cultural ties. The plan includes a £1.2 billion project to utilise British-made power transmission systems for a grid interconnection between Iraq and Saudi Arabia, alongside a £500 million initiative for the reconstruction of the Al-Qayyara airbase in northern Iraq. They agreed to leverage UK private sector expertise in areas like water, energy, and defence facilities, while also securing future investment in clean energy, pharmaceuticals, and financial services. The projects also include the establishment of a 5G network in Iraq by British telecommunications giant Vodafone. Baghdad and London entered the strategic bilateral defense relationship that establishes the basis for a new era in security cooperation. The two prime ministers emphasized addressing challenges related to environmental change and migration. Both Sudani and Starmer were willing to extend cooperation in tackling migration, with tens of thousands of Iraqis and Kurds taking perilous routes to reach Europe to escape corruption, political instability, and a lack of employment. The Iraqi premier began his official visit amid historic geopolitical shifts in the Middle East. Iraq is striving to avert becoming a conflict zone amid regional instability. Bureau Report, NewsX.
We will now take a look at some news updates from the business world. Global markets were steady on Wednesday as investors waited for US consumer price data, which could affect future monetary policy. They looked ahead of earnings reports from major banks, hoping they would meet high expectations. US stock failures were flat, while European and UK figures saw slight gains ahead of British inflation report. US imports from China ended the year strong. Some companies stockpiled items like apparel, toys, furniture, and electronics in preparation for potential new tariffs under President-elect Donald Trump. Trump, set to take office on the 20th, has threatened 10% to 60% tariffs on Chinese goods. During his first term, Trump mainly targeted Chinese parts. Trade experts predicted his next wave of tariffs could apply to finished goods. The US Securities and Exchange Commission sued Elon Musk on Tuesday for allegedly delaying the disclosure of his large stake in Twitter. The SEC claimed Musk violated federal securities law by waiting 11 days to report his initial purchase of 5% of Twitter's shares in 2022, which he later went on to acquire fully. Taiwan's government stated that its inclusion from new US restriction chips on AI chip technology and exports should reassure confidence in supplies, controls and legal compliance. The US announced tighter AI export regulations. This limits exports to most countries and maintains a ban on sales to China, Russia, Iran and North Korea, aiming to preserve advanced computing power. The Climate Investment Funds issued a $500 million debut bond. The bond aims to attract private investment in low-carbon technologies in emerging markets. It was 6 times oversubscribed. The funds will support CIF's Clean Technology Fund, focusing on solutions like battery storage and coal transition. The deal highlights the growing role of private sector funding in climate finance. Inga Group, the investment arm of IKEA, will invest $1 billion in recycling companies to better manage waste from discarded furniture, bedding and mattresses. This move aligns with upcoming EU legislation that will charge retailers a fee for every textile or clothing item sold to fund the recycling and sorting of growing textile waste. And that is all we have time for. We will be back with more international news updates.